All right, we are live with the Unlocking Manhood podcast. We have a very special guest today, Pat Hiban, who's the founder, one of the three founders of Go Abundance Tribe. And he has a lot of not just life experience, but experience with leading men who are doing extraordinary things in their lives. So I'm really honored that he's given us some time, and buckle up for a great episode. Pat, welcome on.
Thanks, Thomas. It's good to be here, buddy. I appreciate you reaching out to me and excited to delve back into my middle school years and see what's been going on since then.
Awesome. So let's start there. What were things like for Pat when he was, 12 to 14 years old?
I think it was pretty easy. I mean, it's kind of a latchkey kid. It was a total of 5 kids in my family, and at 12, my parents got divorced at 12, so I kind of became I think that's kind of where some of my independence started. I look at it as a good thing, it allowed me the freedom because my mom didn't have time to kind of watch us because she worked too. So, I was kind of responsible for getting to school and home from school and that sort of thing. I wasn't an exemplary kid in any way, shape, or form. I was pretty much under the radar. I think if you asked anybody that knew me back then, even in high school, I was a very much under the radar type of guy. I didn't play any sports. I tried to play some sports, but I was really bad at them. I wasn't like a lady killer or you know, class president or football team guy. I wasn't really anything. I was just a guy, and I had my group of friends. I had a pretty diverse group. I think if I excelled at one thing, it was probably being friends with a lot of different people, and not kind of clicking, um, or falling into a clique and not being able to shake that click because I didn't have a click. I kind of tried everything. I tried sports. I tried, you know, smoking weed. I tried, whatever groups there were, you know, Latin club. I tried every angle of everything and kind of nothing really stuck. I was just kind of a guy that was just around a lot. So, anyways,
So your parents divorced when you were 12. You spent a lot of time at home by yourself. Moving into high school, did that continue? Were you
well,
kind
that's the thing. It wasn't at home back then. We didn't do that. So I spent a lot of time out in the universe. Um, but anyways, that's a minor point. Yeah, I was rarely home. I didn't want to go home. I had a brother and a sister who were, let's just say, rambunctious or had issues growing up, and I was right in the middle of both of them, and I just didn't want to. I didn't need it. I'd rather create my own world. So I was trying to stay out of the house as much as possible.
So what type of stuff did you do when you're out connected? It sounds like you did a great job connecting with different groups of people.
That's interesting. I think looking back on it, in 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I was probably playing a lot, playing war, wiffle ball, whatever games you could play in groups, just talking, I guess. And then as high school came, I worked. I got a job early. I was working early, and I always wanted money, and I guess there was some sense of satisfaction. It's funny. I mentor a kid now who's 18, and he was struggling with his grades last semester, and I was like, you got to cut down your hours. You're working too much. And, he expressed to me that, his work meant a lot to him, that he loved what he did and he loved working. He makes subs at a convenience store. And it kind of reminds me of that. I think that I must have been getting a lot of some feeling from working. I can't pinpoint the words, but it's the same that he has now, where he was like, you can't take away my work from me, which I just felt at the time. I felt this was like a month ago. I was like, that's really weird that someone your age loves work that much that you're going to let your grades suffer. But looking back, that was me. I didn't necessarily get good grades, but I always loved working. I mean, I just liked to do it. It was autonomous. It was just like autonomous. I just did it. I was always the youngest one too. I was like, I washed dishes for probably 3 years, I think, and
Wow.
like 5 different restaurants. And a lot of the times I was the youngest one in the kitchen, but I liked it.
It's interesting how the universe brought back somebody into your life that had a similar mindset to you when you were 18.
It is. It is. I didn't realize it till we just started talking about it.
So what, high school age, Pat, you're working, doing your dish gig. It's something you really enjoyed. How, and obviously GoBundance, the big part of it is managing your finances and developing horizontal income. What was your game with money when you were, in your teenage years?
I guess control. I'm going to use big words like control, like freedom. There was no small game. There was no like, I guess, that's a good question. I did have a small game that my grandfather got a car and gave it to my dad. It was a Plymouth Duster, like 1972 or some shit. It was a Plymouth Duster, green, and it was really for my older brother, who was a year and a half older than me, 1 grade older than me, and he didn't work. He didn't want to work, and it's just, I don't know. He just didn't have you know what? He played soccer, and he was really good at it. Matter of fact, the team he was on won the state championship. So he did that. He had a girlfriend that he was like, gonna marry, and like, very focused on. And he just didn't want to work though. He didn't want to make any money, and I wanted to make some money. So my dad said, well, it's just gonna sit there, because my dad didn't live with us. So he's like, I don't got a place to park it, so I'm gonna park it in your guys' driveway. And they said, if whoever gets insurance first can drive it, because it's paid off or whatever. So that was my game. I just wanted to save up to buy insurance. So I got my insurance, and then I got my driver's license, and I was able to drive this car for my high school years. And my brother, he had a bus pass or whatever. Like he didn't, he just, to me, I got something out of that. I think I got something out of the win there, that I got to do this, and he didn't do it, almost in a competitive spirit, but he didn't care. He wasn't competing with me. He just,
Yeah.
and he was, that was just his life. He didn't care about the car. It would cost too much as far as having to work.
And I'm going to dig a little deeper here. Did you, with that issue, like you said, your brother wasn't too worried about it internally, were you ever conflicted, like, oh, here I am, a year and a half younger than my brother, and I'm the one that's out driving around. Did it affect your relationship with him?
With my brother,
Yeah.
no, he didn't. Like I said, it didn't affect it with him at all. I mean, it probably boosted my ego a little bit and made me feel good and reinforced the benefit of working hard. And it all came together. Like eventually he got his license, and then my sister got her license, so it became more of it wasn't mine. I had it for probably a year and a half by myself. I had it for my prom. I had it, I it was my baby. So but then when I went off to college, they started driving and I just left it at home. And then eventually I had enough money to buy my own car with my own money. And I think that was something special too, because I saved up for that. Like always been a saver. I never really spent my money. Even to this day, 99% of the money that I earn, I spend on investments versus things.
Yeah. So you said you went off to college. Where did you, and I forgot to ask, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Maryland. Let me know if that's too loud.
Sounds good.
Okay? I grew up in Maryland, a suburb called Columbia, Maryland, right outside. It's about 20 minutes outside of Baltimore. And I went to a small college in Maryland that was about 4,000 students, about 1,000 in each class, out up in the mountains. It was about 3 hours from my house. And so, yeah.
Nice. And where did you go to college?
It was called Frostburg State College.
And back then, what was your draw to college? What was there a specific trade that you were pursuing?
Well, my draw to college was the socialization aspect of it and the getting out of the house aspect of it. I wanted the adventure. That's why I chose the farthest college I could get from my house with in-state tuition. So that was my decision making. I could have went to University of Maryland, but much bigger and more respected college. But I chose a small college because I just wanted to get far from home. I didn't want to be a commuter. I just want to get dropped off and have an adventure and meet new people and do new things. And I actually didn't pick kind of like with high school. I couldn't really figure out anything really strong, like what I liked or what I was passionate about. I took 2 years of college just taking liberal arts classes, and then I got called into the counselor's office, and she said, "You have to pick a major." And I said, "Well, I have 2 years left. I can't afford to go 4.5, 5 years. I got to go 4 years." She's like, "Well, you got history and sociology." She's like, "History is 12 classes and sociology is like 10. I said, "I'll go sociology," because it's 2 less classes. I'm like, whatever. So I went sociology and graduated on time. I didn't know what I wanted to do, so it didn't matter. I just wanted to graduate.
It's interesting. A lot of your process, I talk to young kids now, and they have a similar story around how they choose their major, how they choose where they go into school. And obviously it worked out for you. How do you feel now that you've seen what you've seen in the world and done a lot of work with investments and building relationships and businesses, the journey that you went through on college, what were the values of two-part question? Number one, what were the biggest values that you got out of it? And the second one is, what things would you change if you were delivering that same experience now for young men and women?
So the first question was, what did I get out of the college experience?
Yes.
Well, I became a real estate agent. And so financially, what I got out of the college experience is I personally sold houses to over 100 people that I went to college with, or after. I said it was 4,000 kids there, but what you have to understand is that when you go to a small college, you walk past the same people every day. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same people. So I made a lot of connections. And then what happened was I married my wife, who also went to college there. So we spent a lot of time after college going to alumni events. We went to homecoming. I've probably been to like 15, 17 homecomings. And my fraternity always had a summer picnic. I probably went to 10 fraternity summer picnics. So like I didn't work it on purpose, but I worked it, just because I was a guy that helped organize things and helped and always went to things, was pretty consistent. And my wife was too. And I didn't have a sphere of influence I was 21. I'm an October baby. So I was 21 when I graduated college, 21 when I got my real estate license. And I didn't have a sphere of influence. So the only sphere of influence I had was like a fraternity list of all the alumni. And so I just started sending them letters and stuff and just working it. But at one point I had counted over 100. So that's one of the benefits I got out of it. And that would have happened no matter what my major was. Second thing, but as far as what I got from a skill set, and I actually will copy this. This is a Tim Ferriss quote. But what college does really, I believe, especially if you go to a not a suitcase college, you know what I mean? Like where you basically go there and it's not a commuter college, right? You don't have a car your freshman year. So the benefit to that I found was socialization. You learn to socialize really fast. Like you're put on a floor of a dormitory with 35 other men or boys. There's a certain socialization that happens just automatically. That becomes your family, right? Because you're taking showers, you're eating lunch, breakfast, and dinner in a dining hall, with them. So there's a really fast socialization process, I think, that I think is important, me personally. Second thing that you learn, and also people from other areas, other races, other religions, other beliefs, all that you get way out of your neighborhood, right? Which is good for us all. The second thing that you learn, because you don't really remember, like I don't really remember, the syllabus for the class I took called collective behavior, or I remember the names. I took a class called collective behavior, which is what people do in groups. I took a class called deviant behavior, believe it or not. That was a great one, right? These are sociology classes, but I couldn't tell you what it was. I couldn't teach anything in it. But what you learn is you learn how to cram. Every college kid, I don't care who you are, you cram. So, you have a test for your deviant behavior class. You're not going to study. generally you're not going to study until the night before, and then stay up all night study, and then it teaches you to work under deadlines and to respect deadlines and to appreciate deadlines. Same thing with term papers and stuff like that. It's like, do this term paper and here's the deadline, and like, if you don't turn it in by the deadline, you get a 0, right? So you learn deadlines and cramming, and I think that's an important skill in business, because when I sold real estate, a couple of nights I pulled all-nighters where I just had so much work to do. I worked all night, or if I wanted to go on vacation, like they say, the most productive day of your year is the day before you leave vacation. And that's so true, you know what I mean? So you learn to be highly productive under pressure and not flip out. So
Yeah.
that's my answer to the question.
Cool. I love that. It sounds like there's a lot of it had absolutely nothing to do with the content and everything to do with the experience.
None. I couldn't tell you anything about sociology, and I took 10 classes in it,
So the next question would be, what things, you've seen a lot, what things would you now insert into the college or the school experience that aren't currently in place?
That's a good question. I got a couple answers. So the first one is the fiscal aspect of real life. Like the things that we talk about at GoBundance, doing deals, analyzing deals. Look, if they're going to teach you silly stuff in school, pretty much everything they teach you is, in a lot of the classes, is just, you're not going to use it, right? Even the math, right? The probability, statistics, geometry, algebra, 1, 2, 3, trigonometry. That's all great brain activity, but you don't use it. Well, what if you taught, how to how about like the CCIM courses, and you went to college and every year you took a CCIM course, like which is like how to figure out what the highest and best use of a building is, where you analyze, is it a restaurant? Do you rent it out for apartments? Do you make it into a TV repair shop or whatever, or how to run numbers, how to save, things like that are really fiscally focused, I think needs to be added. I also think that especially now, because people growing up now don't know how to communicate, I think that there ought to be courses on communication, like how to look someone in the eye, how to, the proportion of 2 ears and 1 mouth, and using that in that proportion where you're a better listener than talker. How to, how to make someone feel appreciated, how to not over talk somebody, how to, and then maybe even take it to the next level, like sales, like how to close a deal, how to build rapport, how to, ask hard questions. Just think of how much better a person you would be if you just had one class in that. Think if you had like, let's say you had your instructor took 3 hours out of the 50 hours that they have to teach you something, and they taught it on how to win friends and influence people. You know what I mean? Like saying their name as much as possible. Step 1. Be interested, not interesting. Step 2. And just went on that. You would that would be the most worthy class you took. I think that the other part of that question too, and I'm very moderate. I bounce back and forth. You really cannot pin me down. But I I saw a fascinating documentary called Uncle Tom, and it's about African American conservatives. And one of the things they talked about was the colleges, and I had no idea that this was the case. But like, they have these groups of, well, they're trying very hard to make colleges sociologically balanced, but where they don't balance them is in people's beliefs. They only balance them in people's race or religions, which more and more as time goes on, you can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
And so just because, someone looks a certain way, you can't predict how they think, and nor should you. So where the colleges are failing is they're actually not balancing balancing themselves with their professors by how the professors think, meaning whether they're Republican or Democrat, to make it simple, or moderate. They're like 98% of all faculty in the United States is Democrat. So
Wow.
as an instructor, that's the slant you're always going to get. Whether or not they're going to pitch politics is a whole nother thing, but just the fact that they think that means in history, they might be more apt to forget some of the more, and I'm going to go back to this documentary because I really enjoyed it. Like, there's this guy, Thomas Sewell, who, who was very popular in the 60s and 70s, and very created a lot and did a lot, but they don't teach him in colleges, right? They teach Frederick Douglass, who, or people like that who didn't have as big of an impact, or whatever. You have to watch it. But anyways, my answer to your question would be, they would be politically balanced, and they would allow for debate, because I think that a lot of the kids now, they're afraid to debate, right? They'll debate online. They'll debate in a video game and call each other really bad names in a video game where they have avatars, and they'll bash each other on YouTube and Instagram, but face to face, they look at their feet and walk away. They don't know how to have a confrontation, and it's not okay to hold two opposing views in your mind at the same time, where it needs to be learned. It needs to be a learned behavior where you could say, this guy thinks this way and this guy thinks the other way, and I'm not going to say how I think because I haven't thought about it enough yet. Or maybe I agree with both of them. That doesn't exist. And the more, in this case, conservative thinking, what do you call them? Professors, you can add, the more balanced the college is going to be, truly.
Absolutely. What was the name of that documentary you spoke of?
Uncle Tom.
Uncle Tom. Okay. Cool. Great answers. So moving on, you talked about, you launched your real estate career, and tell us about how that built throughout your life, and then connecting with Tim and oh gosh, I'm embarrassed. I'm forgetting the other
David,
founder.
Tim, David, and Mike. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's the GoBundance story is a very good story because it's authentic. Like, it's just not a conscious story. It's just a story about the universe. Like, I've always been into self-improvement. David's always been into self-improvement. I went to a seminar, and David went to the same seminar. I had not even met him. And the guy leading it, one of our mentors, Dr. Fred Gross, said, okay, I want everyone in the room to pick someone you're going to be their peer partner, which means you're going to hold them accountable to their goals this year. And
Wow.
almost all of the people at the seminar were couples. And I had little kids at the time. I went, and I always worked by myself. So I went by myself. He was single guy, a couple years younger than me. So I looked at him, he looked at me, and we kind of did like a head nod, like, what's up, dude? And we became peer partners. And I didn't know him from Adam. And then we both enjoyed talking numbers, talking about money, talking about deals. And we connected. And then about 5 years later, after David and I, we just started going to other seminars together. Like we would find stuff in Boston or Michigan or something. And then I never had like a seminar buddy. I always had to do them by myself because most of the real estate agents, they didn't get it. Like they didn't. I'm like, well, I'm going to a Remax convention for 5 days. They're like, why would you take 5 days away from your business to go hang out with a bunch of other agents? I'm like, because you learn so much. I mean, it's amazing. So David was always good. He's like, hey, there's a seminar here or there's this thing here, and we would meet and go there. Anyways, to make a long story short, we went to this one called Money Matters in Chicago, just a random thing. I don't even think they had them after this one they had, and not enough people showed up or something. But I'm tying my shoes in the lobby of the hotel to go running. I run into Tim Road. He's going running too. And we start talking, and he's like 41 years old. And I guess I was like 37 or something. He's like, I retired last year at 40. I said, what? He said, yeah, I've been retired for a year. I said, what do you do? He said, I ski. I said, wow, really? Tell me more about this. And then we ran and talked, and I wasn't thinking about retiring forever. And here I met this guy, and it just basically kind of disintegrated my belief system. And then I told David that night we were eating dinner. I was like, dude, I met this guy running this morning. You got to meet him. So like the next day we saw Tim, and Tim's like, I'm going running tomorrow. Do you want to go again? So we went running. David didn't even run. He barely had like the right shoes or anything, but he went running. And then we just started talking horizontal income and that sort of thing. And we understood each other. And then we just ended up becoming fast, like accountability partners, where my wife always thought it was funny because I would get on the phone with those guys and sometimes we'd have like 3-hour calls, like
wow,
like teenage girls, and they're like, how, and people are like, she was like, what the fuck do you guys talk about? What's going on? And we're like, well, we talk about money and how to make more and how to be better husbands and how to be fitter and a lot of things that I can't talk with anybody about that I know from around my area. And at the time, like Tim was in California and David was in Texas and I was in Maryland. So, wasn't like we could meet for breakfast every morning. So,
right.
So anyways, make a long story short, we started inviting other people because we got tired of our own stories. We had like 18 over at David's house. It went really well. We basically organized it just kind of like how you plan for a party. We just planned for 18 people to come to his house. And instead of saying we're going to play these games, we said we're going to play, we're going to set goals and we're going to count money and we're going to, do this and that, like almost like a class, analyze deals, whatever. and we loved doing it. And then we had a meeting up near Tim's, and we had 36 people there. And it was at that point where, we all worked really hard for that. And we said, here's the thing, we should probably charge money for this because people really like it. And we did, and pretty much everybody that was there signed up. And that's kind of how it began, is just like, literally, it was just something that we like to do, just like how you like to, if you're a party planner, you like to plan a party and invite your neighbors over. That's exactly what we did, and it was very natural and easy for us to do.
That's awesome. I love that story of how you all connected through the conferences. I have to smile because my accountability partner that I've had for nearly 5 years now, we also met at a conference. It was an Indian club fitness conference. And we just hit it off, and I said, hey, do you want an accountability partner? I've been trying to find somebody for years that's up to, hold each other accountable. That's kind of scary, but yeah, let's do it. So, and we haven't missed a week since. So there's definitely something to going to these conferences and workshops and finding other people that are driven to also learn and get themselves better.
Yeah, there's commonality that you can find there, which you probably, it's a lot harder to find in your neighborhood. You know what I mean? Like, you're already both into fitness because you're there, and you're already both into getting better and improving because you're there and you paid money for a conference. So you're like already with somebody who's learning based and thinks the same way about fitness as you. You know what I mean? And the same thing
Yep.
happened with David and I and Tim. We knew we were learning based because we paid money, and we were all there by ourselves, right? We paid money, and we're serious enough about it that they weren't going to be like, let me wait to find someone else to go with me. We're like, I'm going to go by myself, which is kind of like going to a movie by yourself, right? You generally won't go to a movie by yourself, even though you really don't care. At our age, no one's going to point at you. It's just weird, it's just uncomfortable. It's kind of similar to going to one of these conventions by yourself and going all in. But it's it works, it made us all, the barrier to entry was already there. We already knew what kind of people the other guy was.
Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. I want to step into GoBundance, and something that you've done a beautiful job of is, and through this whole process that we've talked about, leading men that are wanting to live extraordinary lives. And I equate it to the difference between like a college or a high school football coach and somebody like Tony Dungy, where they're leading men that are already playing at a very high level. And it's a lot different than just, hey, I need you to do A, B, C. It's like, how is that evolution? And talk about the process of leading extraordinary men.
I think, some of that is, in a younger person, you have to almost give up the expectation that they're going to come to you. Some might come to you, but if you give it up, it'll make it a lot easier. Like, you got to be like, well, they're just a kid. I'm going to continue to coach them, and I'm going to continue to give them nuggets and encourage them and believe in them. I think it's more about belief, actually. Like, the biggest thing you could do with younger kids, I think, is just believe in them. Be like, I believe in you. I trust you. You got this. Versus the older ones, it's not necessarily about the belief. It's, they either at that age, they either believe in themselves or they don't. If they don't, then they probably need a shrink is going to do that job. But your job is more like, and they can do that job successfully, but your job as a mentor is probably like them coming to you rather than you going to them. Them coming to you, saying they want it, and you giving them enough advice in things that they could actually take in, and that they could actually, and that they actually work on. Like there's nothing worse than a mentee that comes to a mentor and asks for advice, and then you give them advice and they don't take any of it. And all that makes you want to do is not mentor them anymore.
Right.
But lo and behold, you get a guy that comes to you and asks you for advice, and then they follow up in a month and they said, man, I did everything you said. And, I'll take real estate for an instance. The agent comes to me and says, what should I do? How should I do it? And I tell them, and they're like, I read that book. I did this, and I listed 4 houses because of it. And I'm like, cool. Well, how else can I help? You know what you ought to do next is this. So I feel like it's definitely, the older you get, the more of a magnet the mentee needs to be for the mentor. It's not worth their time. Whereas younger, there's no rules. Like, you should give everybody the same, whether they take your advice or not. You should just keep believing in them until they turn 18, basically. Just keep imposing on them, because you never know, people, I've had people pull stuff up, 15 years, 20 years later. I remember you said this to me. I remember I went to you and this is what you said. And I'm like, wow, really? But at the time I didn't think anything of it, right? I was just talking.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big one. Is I like the concept of finding somebody that's attracted to you, that resonates with you. And then if they're coming to you for information, they're going to execute, they're going to follow through with what you're asking to do if it's in their heart, and then they take the action. It reinforces the relationship.
Yep.
We've got a few minutes left. This is a unique question. I don't usually get to this. If there was one question that you wished more people would ask you, what would that be?
I have a personal pet peeve that people don't try to understand people's jobs and their titles. Like, a lot of people ask me what I do, and my answer always changes. It's very difficult for me because I do so much. But for instance, I'll meet someone at a party and I'll be like, what do you do? And they'll say, I'm a systems analyst, or I'm an account executive. And I'm like, and they're always surprised that I say, okay, well, wait a minute. What systems do you analyze? Like, what does that mean? Like, when you show up for work, what do you do all day? And they tell me, but they're like, no one's ever asked that before. And I think that more people should ask me that. Like, they ask, well, what do you do? Sometimes I say I'm an author. Sometimes I say, I'm an investor. Sometimes I talk about GoBundance. No, rarely does anybody go, oh, really? How many members are there? How much does GoBundance cost? How often do you guys meet? What do you believe in? They don't.
That's awesome. I love that. And that's actually, I'm going to give Pat some credit. When I met Pat last month, it's something that he did with me. He's like, whoa, the Unlocking Manhood program, what is it? Who do you serve? What do the retreats look like? How's the formats? What are the lessons? And so it's really cool. He's constantly, and if we're cycling back around through the lessons of this whole episode, he's constantly digging deeper into what people do. so that he can more help them, and potentially they also can help him in some way, whether it's selling a piece of real estate or somebody's analyzing data that he needs. He knows, oh, I met somebody that can do it, but doesn't. If you don't take that next step, you're not going to increase your network in that way.
Yeah. So I have a godson. His name is Jack, and I want him to go through your program.
Absolutely. Pat, I appreciate you coming on today, and I feel very blessed and fortunate to have your message shared with our audience, and look forward to connecting soon.
Yeah, absolutely, Thomas. This has been fun, actually. I didn't know any of the questions ahead of